To Jim's children, Ann and Susan, Kathy, Tom, Chuck, and Mark, I offer you my sympathy, not only on my own behalf, but on behalf of our parish community. We offer you also our promise of prayers, not only for your dad, but also for you. It is never easy to face the death of your last parent, because regardless of our age, it's no fun to be an orphan. You now move up the ladder. You become the oldest generation. And it's your dad who kept you connected to each other. And now it will take an extra effort for you to remain connected as a family. Without a doubt, Jim Burgmeier was one of the singularly most kind people I have ever met. Both his kindness and his empathy were radiant. If he had one fault, it would be that in conversation, you could never ask about him. How are you, Jim? Oh, no, Father. How are you? Jim, I worry about you. Oh, no, Father. I worry about you. Could we both worry about each other? In the first reading this morning, we hear from among the wisdom literature of the Old Testament. There is an appointed time for everything, a time for every affair under the heavens, a time to be born, a time to die. Jim was born in the roaring 20s. He was 6 years old when the great stock market crash of 1929 occurred, which left many destitute as our country fell into the depths of an economic depression. That experience became formative for anyone who experienced the Depression. Jim at that time went to St. Columbkill Grade School here in Dubuque and then to Loras Academy. He showed leadership. He was elected senior class president and chosen as the captain of the football team. It was during those years, through a buddy of his, that he first met the woman who would become his beloved wife, Joanne. Joanne had come to Dubuque to attend Visitation Academy and to have a relative who was a dentist do some work on her teeth. Jim completed 2 years at Loras College and then was called into military service. Times to love, a time of war. Then came a time to wound and a time to heal. Jim was wounded during the Battle of the Bulge. A bullet came about as close to his heart as it could without killing him. And the wound didn't heal. Finally, a surgeon discovered that part of Jim's socks that he would wear around his neck to keep them warm had entered the wound with the bullet. Once that was removed, he began to heal, and Jim received a Purple Heart. A time to laugh and a time to dance, the author says. Jim returned home, finished college at Northwestern, and then married that beloved sweetheart, Joanne. The gal he had set his heart on so many years before, when she was probably only about 14. That marriage lasted 59 years, until Joanne's death in 2005. For all those years, Jim and Joanne's life revolved around their children and raising a healthy and faith-filled family. Jim, I was told, had an interesting technique in teaching his children moral lessons. Jim was a great storyteller, and he used a character possibly named John Brown. And woven into the story of John Brown were dilemmas that were not unfamiliar to the Burgmeier household. The story would then proceed to resolution, to the quandary from which the children could learn a moral lesson. There was always a moral to the story. So much so that Anne says whenever her dad would start to tell a story, even as an adult, she'd say, "Oh my God, what is he trying to teach me now?" A time to embrace. Jim was apparently well known among his grandchildren for the great bone crusher hug. A good embrace with sounds that would be like "rrr." Jim really leaves you with lots of good memories. Loading up the station wagon with 7 kids off on a vacation, beginning by praying the rosary together. Our wisdom author continues, God has made everything appropriate to its time, but the timeless he has put into our hearts. Jim's legacy to each of us is the timeless. His dedication to his wife, for the greatest thing a father can do is to love his wife. His pride in and dedication to his children and grandchildren. Our visitors who went to visit Jim, their notes would say that he talked about each one of the children, each one of the grandchildren, what they were doing, where they were at, remembering everything. The closest thing to an unkind word that I ever saw was shortly after Jim moved to Oak Park Place, and he told our parish visitor, "My kids think I need a babysitter." But it's okay. I'd rather be in my own home. I love being in my home, but it's okay. So he had that great pride and dedication to his children and grandchildren, and his dedication and abiding trust and faith in God. Jim built his professional life and his family life upon the rock of his faith. Not everyone who says, "Lord, Lord," will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father in heaven. Jim made his expression of faith concrete. I was told that his mother had a great devotion to the Blessed Mother and made sure that her children prayed the rosary. That same devotion accompanied Jim throughout his life. He and Joanne had to share some dark days with the early death of their son Bill, and it was undoubtedly Jim's faith that kept him going. When Joanne died, it was very apparent that a part of Jim had died also with her. I would ask him about his diet. I would ask him about his safety. And he was never, I suspect, entirely honest in answering those questions. He could deflect them easily by saying, "God has been good, I have no complaints." Jim lived his life trusting in God. When our Lord called Jim home in the early hours of Tuesday morning, Jim met God as a friend. Someone he had known a long time, over his 93 years. For Jim's house had been built solidly upon the rock of his faith. I think if Jim would want to impart any message to us today, if he could stand here and say something, he might well echo those words of St. Paul to the Philippians. I want you to be happy, always happy in the Lord. I repeat, what I want is your happiness. Let your kindness be known to all. The Lord is near. There is no need to worry. If you need something, ask God for it in prayers of praise and thanksgiving. Think of whatever is honorable, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is gracious. Keep on doing what you have learned and received and what you have heard and seen in me. Then the peace of God will be with you always. What greater gift can there be than to enjoy the peace of God. Jim knew that peace. We pray that Jim is now received into the heavenly kingdom, that he be forgiven for whatever sins he may have had. Farewell to this good and faithful servant.